this. I'm taking
I
a little
like
more
it.
serious. So UFO division, and then Lucius Labs on this side.
Oh, I like it. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, company logo underneath.
Unusual.
But
Yeah, I like that.
I might. I mean, I don't know. It just came to mind. If you want one, I'll send one to you. I know it's silly, but yeah,
Yeah, I love things like that. I like the design going down the arm. That's quite unique.
yeah. Well, I always wear the. I'm in Florida. It's hot, and I do a lot of
I
outdoor
know.
work, and I think they call them sun shirts, but they have
They
hoodies
got,
on them,
yeah, small hood. Yeah.
right? So they're
Yeah.
good for boats, good for fishing, outdoor work, things like that. Yeah. But
Good idea.
yeah. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Alexei. It's been a while since we last talked,
Yeah.
but I've been busy. Lots of different projects, programs, experiments, a lot of traveling all over the world because we have to go to where the phenomena is sometimes, It's usually rural locations, jungles, deserts, mountain tops, the
Yeah.
worst places on earth. But we're very rewarding, certainly. And we're learning a lot more now. And now I'm associated with a number of different scientists, quantum physicists, quantum mechanics, quantum imagers, all sorts of different unique different areas where researches are being applied to paranormal, ufological, and other areas, anomalous phenomena, and revealing some very interesting data. And of course, we've done some advanced studies in the paranormal range, coming out of hauntology, but in more into the paranormal mechanics of, you could say, poltergeist interactions, apport phenomena, um, and also the detailing of quantum tunneling. But, we've got all these fancy names for the phenomena now. An apport traveling through a wall, quantum tunneling. We know the science works, we know how it can be done, and we know that the phenomenon is utilizing these very aspects of these sciences that we never thought of at one time. But now things are changing fast, and we're starting to employ all this new area of research and technologies. And we've got some wonderful toys now with, gadgets and equipment that we can get. Some of them are very expensive. I mean, years ago, nobody thought of doing an EEG. Nobody thought of doing watching your brainwave activity whilst you're up on the top of a mountain because you couldn't lump the equipment there. It was huge. You couldn't get it up there. But now, mobile ones that take the data from your brainwave and straight to your cell phone. And if you have an experience, it's surprising what your brain does. And we would
That's
never
something
know.
I've actually really interested in. I guess I'm going to go ahead and say it, but
Yeah,
I'm submitting a request for the IONS challenge, the grant challenge. And one of the pieces of device, one of the technologies we want to use is a headband set that measures your EEGs,
brilliant.
but we want to modify it to be able to pick up 160 hertz as well as 320 hertz.
Okay.
Um,
You
because
should be able to
potentially,
modify it. It should be able to be done.
right, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
typical, this is more for the audience than you, but like, typical human brain ranges from 0 to 80. Not even typical. Fast gamma is not so much typical, but people go into 80
yes,
hertz.
yes.
Um, but why not 160? Why not 320?
It's
You
just a
know,
parameter that they put on because it's just like, well, where do we stop? Well, let's go for the normal amount. It's like recording things. If you buy a recorder, it's designed to record at human hearing, which is
I-
20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Well, why not? Why can we not go a little bit infrasonic? Why can we not go ultrasonic a little bit? Why can't we? We could do.
we
But,
can. That's the thing.
they
Yeah.
say, well, why would you want it? Well, we do want it. And this is the problem, I think as time goes on, we will get more coming out of these types of equipment, which will go further than the normal bandwidth of what they'll actually achieve to do. But that's a good start. I mean, it could be in the parameters of those areas, there could be things happening we're unaware of. What we can tell you is that we can tell you what things are happening within the parameters of the equipment. It is very
Correct.
interesting when you have a conscious connection with phenomena and you slip into that data. Very
That's the one you
strange.
mentioned was the theta last time, and from
Yeah.
all the people I've spoken with, it's theta, theta, theta,
Uh,
and
well,
what
meditative states,
it right.
SRI remote viewing program, same thing. induced, you know. Seems to be the clue. But I do know that you mentioned that you'd been working or doing some research in some of the ancient locations, maybe resonant chambers, those sort of things. And we have done some of that research over the
That
years.
was definitely something I'm interested in. I haven't personally gone out into the field to those locations to do the research, but I have friends that have, and they've reached out to me as part of this challenge. Um,
Very
and so,
interesting.
yeah, and so we'd like to recreate some of those effects that are. I'm trying not to give away exactly what we're doing,
I
but at the same
Well,
time,
let me
give.
tell you some of the stuff that we did and see if any of those cross line. Right? What we did is that we've got to take in consideration some ancient resonant chambers around the world and the time they were built and what's happened to the Earth since. You know, the wobble, the shift,
Correct. The
you know,
procession of, yep,
the precession. You know, are they as attuned as they used to be? Some not, some are still active. Some aren't active as used, well, not as much as they should have been, basically due to changes. But what we tend to find is like what we call is it's like a narrow bandwidth area and a large bandwidth area. I'll give you an example. If you were to relocate a resonant chamber 60 feet away, some of them will be changed. Some of them will still be as active as they are because of the location of where they are. The footprint band for that is larger and it's been built in that area. But that we've got to know, okay, it's been built in that area, but how big is that area? What's associated with that area? Is it just a narrow or is it a wide? Some of the
right,
wide ones, you know, tend to be working better than the narrow bandwidth ones because they can go off attuned very easily because it's only so large the given area of where they built. So we've focused on the larger ones because we wanted to make sure that we may be going into a location where it's still active because it could
right.
shift like this and still be in the bigger field. It doesn't affect it so much. What we did is that we found out what the resonant chamber's frequency is, the oscillation frequency, and we generated it artificially inside the resonant chamber, making sure that the central location of the chamber has nobody there. Because what happens is in some of these resonant chambers, because of the way they're built, some of them have the arc, these locations built outwards, um, and it's where people sat to generate the
On the outside
on the
versus the inside.
out of the central area. Yeah, because
Correct,
they don't
correct.
want to be in the central area because they're going to change the effects.
That would be it would create interference patterns
It's the
ultimately.
interference pattern, actually, exactly. So they're in these
Yeah.
alcove sort of things, you see. So, but the effect is central point. That's where the all sort of resonates, bouncing back all to a central point. Now, of course, some of those resonant chambers were utilized for different things. Some of them are like a doctor's surgery. Certain resonant frequencies under the situation of being generated in that location can cause the effects of wounds to heal 10 times faster, physical wounds, because of the frequencies generated in there. So it's a bit like going to a doctor's surgery in the sense of it. This is the place to go. Some of them are about separating from your left hemisphere to your right hemisphere.
Right.
It's from meditative states. Some others, though, are literally, we don't know in a physicality, but we do know spirituality. You could say some form of passageway, a doorway, could be
A conscious
spiritual.
doorway though, right? Your
Yes,
physical body is remaining.
your physical body is remaining. However, what's interesting is that the physicality in the spiritual aspect is still there. So let me give you an example. When certain people, because I deal with the abduction phenomena, I've actually got a few clients of John Max, who's passed away now, of course. But some of these people get taken not physically, but in a non-physical manner, like an out-of-body experience. But it's
Right.
still classed as an abduction scenario. However, they have come back and they've had markings on the body because the physicality of the mind affects the physiological aspects of the body. We know that through SISPM,
Correct.
self-induced spontaneous
Placebo
physical
effects and things of that
marker,
nature. Yeah.
placebo, stigmata. I mean, we've done
Yep.
tests putting people under hypnosis and put the coin on their arm, tell them it's hot, they start to blister. So we do know that aspect can carry over into the physical aspect. This is why in the traumatic paranormal cases, we get dermatological phenomena, markings on the skin, but most of them are subdermal. They're actually from under the skin coming up to the top of the skin, as opposed from
Right.
it placed on top. We know that it's internal. So there's something about the spiritual aspect, the out of body aspect, or the psychological aspect of these markings appearing on the skin, which delivers the physicality of it, like say stigmata and stuff. So when we're in these locations, we make sure that obviously we're not interfering with the central chamber at the center of it, and making sure we're not causing any disturbances. So we want it as clean as possible, trying to match the resonant frequency of the resonant chamber. Now, it's what we discovered is what we refer to as a double lock system. We have, of course, equinoxes, and we have, of course, we have these times in a year, don't we? When two
Right.
times
Moon
uh,
cycles, for example,
the
right?
cycles. Now
Right.
that's the sun comes down, shines through to the central chamber. That is really important because that's where the individual would have been. They would have been in the central chamber, the light coming through, hitting them only for a short period of time, might only be for 3 or 4 minutes, and then it's lost. So it's used within a given time. But then the generation of the arm at the same time, the two systems happening at the same time, two different frequencies actually. You got the resonant
Right.
frequency and you got terahertz frequency. Now, what we discover about the terahertz frequency is because when the sun is setting or rising, and it's the best time for meditative states, interestingly enough, because of the terahertz frequency, it gets filtered out a lot of the certain wave bands of light, and we're in recipient of the terahertz frequency more from the rising or the setting sun. That enters the chambers down the terahertz frequency. That terahertz frequency is matching 1.4 on many occasions terahertz, which matches the same auric field terahertz frequency around UAP. Interestingly enough, why that was, we don't know, but it kept coming up. It's also the same terahertz frequency applied to some
Materials.
metamaterials
Yeah.
to
I
have
knew
them
where, yeah, I knew where you were
react.
going with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's just all seems to link in. Now, what happened is that
Hmm.
during these experiments, we're having to find the right location, one which has a wider mapping, so that if it was shift, it didn't affect it too much. So hopefully, it was still active to some degree.
Correct. I see what you're saying there.
Yeah, but it's also
Uh,
interesting to point out that about 70% of these locations were destroyed by the people that made them, or buried
hmm.
by the people that made them. So there was there's obviously a reason why
It's
70, only
interesting.
30% remain. 70% they've literally destroyed or buried. And we're
I mean, I can
finding
only
them to
speculate
today.
on that right now, and that would be almost they got too close to the phenomenon, right? And it
Well,
started to take
it's
over.
interesting. It depends on what they're used for, Alexei, because if they're used for something a little bit more unusual in regarding maybe communications with phenomena or interactions with phenomena, which some of these were definitely doing, well, what we tend to be doing is digging them up and reactivating them,
Yep.
which seems to be a common trait at this moment, especially throughout
And
Turkey.
I've watched a few of your, plenty of your work actually, and one of the things you go through is the stages of possession of
Yes.
poltergeist phenomenon. And how could that relate now to digging up and activating or wanting to close off some sort of temple? Maybe the temple goes through its 9 stages and now it's fully activated. Um,
Well,
and so then you need to close it off. That was kind of
it's
what was coming to mind. Yeah.
you are right. There is different levels to this, but the adjusting intent of usage, there's the start. That's the switch on button, the intent. Um, because they actually do want to reactivate these things, because they're doing it through research, want to find out what were they doing, why were they doing it, and through that process, there's a handshake, there's a helping hand that wants it, that wants to have this reactivated on just on the other side, and sometimes it guides those individuals to, so as we say, make them active.
Right.
And there's obviously something in regarding homage, worship
Hmm.
with these deities. I can only call them deities because they've got godlike abilities, the little G's, we could say. But it does seem that, and there's a lot of different ones, and they all seem to be doing something with these ancient sites in association. But when we conducted the tests in there, and we matched the two frequencies. We only had about 4 minutes to do this because we've got the light coming in from the terahertz frequency. We've got the artificial generated frequency inside. And now we've eliminated ourselves from the location, but we've had to put equipment in there, recording devices, filming devices. Well, the filming devices didn't really get much apart from the audio on the film or the recorders, the audio recorders, because what was heard, because I've worked with my colleague Barry Fitzgerald, and these tests reveal, first off, what sounded like the sound of rock movement, the movement of heavy rock. But there is no movement taking place, but you clearly can hear it. And sometimes you'll hear chant, and sometimes you'll hear drum beat. But it's not coming from us. It's not coming from our side. Now it's rather it's kicking up a regeneration of audible phenomena like we would get in stone tape theory, from
Right.
past stuff.
Uh,
Or it's coming
it
from
kind
the other side, or it's coming from elsewhere.
I had a question, and I believe I wrote it down. I was watching something you wrote, and it had to do with patterning, essentially how emotions can transcribe onto you. I'm not sure if I'm gonna use the word quantum very loosely here, but you can make
Okay.
imprints through emotional states in the quantum
Oh,
field that then can react later on, different moments of time. And so could that potentially be some type of quantum imprintation that has been created through patterning?
well, this is going to surprise you. Tell me where we were up to with the quantum imaging situation. Okay, so 5 years ago, scientists came forward and made an announcement, and it fell on deaf ears. That announcement was about 5 years ago to say there are things outside our space and time, physiological constructs, geological, constructs around us that we are unaware of because we don't see them. And there is no camera. It's not about, oh, well, I'll get infrared or ultraviolet or full spectrum or whatever.
It's
Doesn't
not
matter.
electromagnetic, really,
It's not. No,
Right.
it's outside space and time. It doesn't require photonic interaction. So there's the big issue. Yeah. Because everything that we want to take a photograph of has photonic
Right.
actions.
How do you see it if there's no photon interaction? Right.
Exactly. Well, we knew it existed about 12 years ago in paranormal photography analysis and video, and because we'd sometimes have normal photographs, and then all of a sudden, every photograph's are fine, and then 1 minute there's just a black void of nothingness, and you think, what is that? Under analysis, that's photonic disruptions taking place via the phenomena. In other words, it's like dark matter, in a sense of speaking. It's the photons, it's being absorbed, they're going, there's nothing there. How that can happen under normal photographic conditions is beyond us. But what's interesting is that the phenomenon does demonstrate this occasionally. Now, is it really there? Or are we just seeing the phenomena interfering with the visuals of it, demonstrating something to be seen, what we see on camera, but not necessarily in the 3D world in a sense, or the 4D world, we'd be saying. So we had to go one further, and that went into quantum imaging. Now, when we got into quantum imaging, which was 2 years ago, I got heavily involved in quantum imaging. I'm working with a number of guys from hiddenworld.co. You can check that website out. They've been involved in lots of different stuff. And I was absolutely blown away to realize what quantum imaging can do. I mean, quantum imaging can diagnose. It can take just a normal photograph because what happened was, I thought, like many other people, quantum imaging, that requires specialized cameras and cubics and things. It's how they're doing it because they're getting a photograph of me and revealing data.
With a digital camera, though, I'm assuming, or is it with a film?
No, no, because this is what I thought. No, there's a certain part under quantum imaging, which is quantum spectral analysis of all data. So that doesn't matter if you provide them a photograph. Quantum data is in there. I mean, they're even talking about this quantum data just in the photonic from the sun, the photons from the sun. So if you provide a still from a video or 10-second video or a photograph and provide it them, they can extract quantum data out of it. And I thought, well, it's not a matter of just taking a photograph with a special camera, a quantum camera. There actually is other processes involved in this. And this is what they specialize in diagnosing, taking a photograph of an individual. And what happens is they go through this form of analysis, and it's like looking at layers of glass. Each layer of that glass has got a different part of what our reality, what we see. They go beyond that. There's something else. Go beyond that. There's another. And it's like the whole image of our reality is made up of, say, 20 layers of glass. And we're looking through it. We don't know it consists on the side. It's 20 layers. We only see that side. But it's behind it. It's all there.
I get that. Like higher
Yeah,
dimensions that are emerging
exactly.
stems from. No, I totally get that. But I'm just curious as to how they actually are extracting that data. Um, what are they actually doing? Because I did a lot of astronomy, and when you do astronomy, you use CCD detectors,
Yeah.
charged coupling devices, and now those are in almost every camera that exists. And so I could imagine there being some type of metadata associated with each pixel, and
It's
that,
quantum. It's specialized software. It's being utilized in
right?
analysis. I mean, they've applied it to astrophysics, and I've seen some of the stuff, and it's like, well, you wouldn't normally see the clouding around a galaxy, but you can in the quantum imaging. It's revealing things.
Well,
It's been used
one
for
of the
all
interviews
sorts of things.
you showed a picture, I think, of your backyard, and in the visual, you couldn't really see any lights, but when you applied the quantum imaging, you see, I think it was like three lights above a tree or something like that. I forget exactly what it
That
was.
Yes, that was one of the first demonstration photographs because the quantum analyst said to me, "Go out into your back garden," because I have to be very rigid about the research I do. Are they authentic? Who are these guys? Are they
Right.
credible? And I said, I need to show you. You need to do it on one of my photos. I have to prove it. So I was okay, go outside to your back garden and take a photograph of 60% of the sky and 40% of the ground. So I did, took a photograph. Now, what's interesting is that being a bit of an experiencer, which I am, because I have been an experiencer since a young age, I don't really have to go far to see UAP. Yeah, I can usually go out into the back garden and I tend to see them in one area of the sky mostly. I mean, I have seen it a few other times, but most of the time I come out my back door and I look to the right and it's this area in the sky. I'll take that photograph. Click. Looked at it, just a normal photograph, nothing unusual about that. Sent it to them. The analysis came back on that, and there were two different. They gave me two plates. Now I don't know what plate it was. If there's 20 plates, it could have been 18 and 20 or 19 and 13. I don't know. But there were two areas of that, and one of those areas showed three balls of light in the sky and a very unusual shape, like some type of construct. I no idea what that could be. There's nothing out there in the sky, just blue sky. And another one was what looked to be, and what they referred to, is cranial maximal facial amalgamates. Facial amalgamates. These are
Yep.
faces. Now, there's no bodies. There's, in fact, there's two different things happening, Alexei, with any photograph. There is always one plate there. Faces are on it everywhere. There's always faces. No matter if you're underwater, we've done tests, in space, doesn't matter. No matter where you, even in a vacuum, doesn't matter. There's a baseline of facial amalgamates on the image. And if you take one a second later, click, click, they've changed. So it's not just always the same. It changed position, size, shape, amounts.
And you mentioned too
That
that
was it. That
it's
was
in
really
every photo,
interesting.
right? Because if not, it would
Every.
you would play it off as oh, it's pareidolia. We're just seeing faces. But when you see the same face and or not the same face, but when you see faces in every single photo,
Yeah,
at a certain point,
thousands
right?
of photographs of them in. The thing is that okay, so I kind of doing the research ruled that okay, well, there's a baseline. These are always there. So they're always there. It's like explaining it with NASA photographs of the moon. NASA photographs have a crosshair on them, so making sure that it's all in, there's no warping. But those crosshairs are already on the photograph before you put the image on. So they're always going to be at the forefront. They're always a baseline. They're always there. This is like what the face is sent to me. And I was happy to stay with that. And I said to myself, well, why faces? Why couldn't it be this? Why couldn't it be that? Why has it got to be faces? It's always distorted, unusual faces. And when I was talking to my associate of mine, Trey Hudson, who does works on the Meadow project, he said to
Hmm.
me, it's interesting that the faces, Steve, because that's one of the things that the brain would likely recognize foremost is faces. We
I
measure
caught that
faces.
conversation. Yeah, you talk
Yeah.
about the how a child, right? You could draw a
Yes.
picture of a kid's face, and it doesn't have to be too exact, but the kid will react because it's a face,
It
and they're
is
learning.
probably the most forefront thing you can gain a lot from a thing looking at a face. The emotions of an individual, the even if it's anguished or not, but it's very profound. Um, and I thought, okay, all right, so we see faces. We don't know what they are, of course, and we're left to people's imagination because some people go, "Oh no, it looks terrible," and some people just kind of, "Well, I don't know what it is." Well, we've got to be careful not to draw our own, personal opinions into this and just look at the data. And I thought that was all done and dusted. I still no explanation for what that is until we realised, hang on a second, they're interactive as well. And when we were conducting certain experiments, conducted certain experiments, Trey Hudson's conducted certain experiments, they get stimulated, excited, and start to interact differently with the people in the images.
You mean like the facial expressions are changing, like their mouths open, or they smile, or
Well,
something like that?
sometimes they seem to flood in from one side of the head and come out, and some of them seem to imprint themselves within us. The coloring and the stimulation and the amount of them is indicative of what we are doing at that time, these experiments in the type of research that stimulates them. They seem to get excited. So now we've got two problems. Not only we have a baseline, but we also have the stimulant, how to excite them. So what are they? This is the biggest problem that we're facing. And not only that we are getting constructs, I mean, cubes, big cubes, 25-foot box cubes, which like Trey Hudson's got through the analysis.
Right.
So we wanted to outline what it's interesting. Let's just look at the whole scope of quantum imaging. It can find metals in the ground, including gold and other types of ore. It can be identified just from video or photography.
That's what I find the most. I'm still trying to figure that one out. That might take me a
I
minute.
was looking at some of them, and what happens is through the layers, you've got stimulants in the ground which seem to pop out. And what happens is this these areas, and you think, okay, let's go and dig there. And when you dig there, bingo, and this is where and then we realized, hang on a second, what else can it do? Well, taking a photograph of an individual through the layers, you can see the problems in regarding diagnosis, including
Yep.
kidney stones or throat problems or all sorts of things. There's layers there that's it can be used to help. We don't need to just go for a CT scan anymore. We could go through quantum imaging to reveal that data because it's captured there as well. Quantum imaging in regarding astrophysics. There's so many different applicable areas it could be used. But what we are doing is that we're just choosing to use this bit for paranormal ufological. Now, when we got to UAP, it's just taking a ball of light, taking a photo of a ball of light in the sky. I sent it over to get the analyst. It came back. You can see the energy sources which emit around the object. And it's as if it's space-time is being warped according to the visual data. But
Right.
you don't see it. You can't see it on any of the photographs or the video footage. And sometimes we're seeing what's not being recorded. Well, it's interesting because we've seen a craft and not just one of us together filming a craft in the sky, but it's just a ball of light turning up on camera. So which one's real? The ball of light is real on camera and we're seeing a craft, or it is a craft, but it's manipulating the cameras only to be see a ball.
The
You understand
phenomenon
the
is
physics
tricky.
here. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's one of the ones that throws me off, and I feel like it's almost like a mirror. It's a reflection of your own subconscious projection, right? So a ball of light is coming across, but since I've been trained to think grays and aliens, I think I see a UFO with a shiny silver disc. But you have let's just say someone who's extremely religious and all they talk about is Jesus and Mother Mary. They might see angels,
Religious
and
apparition.
but it's the same
Yeah.
ball of light that's creating that effect for both people. And I
We
think
do get
that's
a
one
lot
of the
of that.
more
Yeah.
interesting.
We've
Yeah.
got balls of light. I mean, we've been doing the research going back now for thousands of years. The balls of lights have been interacting with humankind. But out from those ball of light comes the archetype.
Hmm.
Now, what's interesting is that there is something we refer to as the influence or the influencer. There's much research about this, and it's imaged in ways of something whispering into the ear, usually a non-human intelligence. And that influence sparks a thought. The thought is generated in your mind. The phenomena utilizes what you've just thought to manifest it. It needs us. It's utilizing us to manifest. This is why, when they turn around at the Pentagon and say there's four different types of aliens. Well, no, there's thousands of different types,
There's infinite almost.
infinite, because if you
Right.
go back in time, there's so many small, large robots, pixie type, all sorts of different things. There's thousands and thousands of them because there's thousands and thousands of different thoughts as to what they could be. So therefore, they will utilize us for that. Sometimes it's deceased relatives coming out of these balls of light,
Yep.
because they think it might be something associated. It's a soul light. This is what they used to be referred to. In fact, in Australia and China, they were still referred to even modern day as soul lights. The Min Min light in Australia was, by the Aborigines. It's a soul light. It's so if you think it might be a soul light, soul of who? Is it going to be a deceased one? Well, who? What deceased person? Well, you're going to envisage a deceased person. Oh, well, it could be a deceased of my father. Then my father, so bing, there's your father. You see, so we tend to be dealing with something that finds it obviously difficult to interface with humanity. So therefore, it has to deliver a method of interfacing. And this is why all the scientists in 1969, the best scientists in the world, said when they were asked about what happens if we see intelligent life out there, would we recognize it? And the scientists said, well, we've looked at the stars, we've looked at all these planets out there, and Earth's pretty unique. And we know the vast differences and changes on these other planets. And we only need to have a microscopic change on a planet to have massive change in its life. We believe, the best scientists in the world, that you might not even recognize what intelligent life might look like.
I
And
100% agree with that. I actually took
yeah.
a course when I was studying astrophysics at the University of Colorado, and it was called Extraterrestrial Life.
Oh, wow.
And we went over the different definitions of what life actually means, what it has to
Yeah,
reproduce,
micro. Yeah.
right? It needs to eat essentially, and it needs to reproduce. And so by those definitions, fire itself could be considered life because
Yes.
fire reproduces, it has to eat or it dies.
Yes.
And so you could consider that an extremophile. I know we're being very vague here, but then now take extremophiles, that live underwater, the hydrothermal vents, living off of sulfur or something like that, or chemical reactions. Life has filled every single nook and cranny that it has been able
Oh yeah.
to, in my opinion. And the further you go from earthly bodies, the further from Earth-like life you'll come across, and the harder it will be to even recognize it as life.
Exactly. But the
Yeah.
biggest problem we have that with Alexei is that when we're looking at all these thousands of archetypes, they've got two arms, two legs, a nose, two eyes, and a mouth, and hands, because they are the archetype. It's designed to be in our
At the
environment.
same time, though, there is convergent evolution, right? Where you have two
There
animals
is. Yes.
living on different islands but fill the same ecological
Yes, I
niche.
understand that. Yeah.
Right.
But then
Yeah.
you've got to also consider the breathing our air. They can walk on our gravity. They can even eat and drink our food on occasion,
Right.
reported. They are they're interfacing perfectly to our environment.
Well, and that's the thing. So that's why, in my opinion, they're not necessarily from a different planet, but they're from a different layer itself, like a different dimension of
Exactly.
Earth. They're Earthlings. They're from Earth.
They are absolutely earthlings. They are, you could say, interdimensional, whatever
Well,
that
it's
would be, or multidimensional phenomena,
yeah,
ultra terrestrial. You can. There are different names for this. One
yeah.
thing that the evidence does not support is the extraterrestrial traveling from vast distance of place, from planets to planet. Does that hypothesis doesn't fit? Even Pentagon Arrow program confirmed, concluded. Well, don't think there's enough evidence to say extraterrestrial in the way we think it might be. And then you've got the NASA saying the same thing. And now the paperwork that is associated to some of these high profile secret government UAP programs, there's two different phrases that are coming out: occult physics and spiritual technology.
Hmm.
Now, what if we can just wrap our heads what spiritual technology, what it's ethereal, it's astral, spiritual, but it's physical, it's something mechanical, maybe it can be how,
Well,
because it can transition, I think.
when I think of spiritual technologies, I think of um, how our, we were talking about quantum imaging, and it's basically a layering of 20, let's just say 20 pieces of glass for this conversation.
Yes.
And so our physicality is a layering of 20 pieces of glass. Um, how many people are aware of what their bodies look like in all the different pieces of glass? And there's ways to, I'm just going to throw this out. There's ways to laminarize energy as it moves through the different dimensions, and potentially that could be what the resonating chambers somewhat do. They act to laminarize. I call it laminarizing the fluid.
Yeah.
They act to laminarize the actual energy, that I call it fifth dimensional energy because it's streaming through all the different layers. So it's a
Yes.
different access that we really don't
Yes.
have. So
But
if you
that fifth,
laminarize fifth dimensional energy, are you creating spiritual technologies? That's
well,
how I
yeah.
would for that term.
Yeah. I mean, with the reality that we see, I mean, reality is created it's constructed in our consciousness. Reality is what we know so far, and within that, the construction is made up of crystallization, and it's called the E8 lattice. You can Google that. You might find an
I'm
interesting
listening right
video.
now. I'm learning.
Yeah.
When you say E8 lattice, are you talking about within our minds, like brain harmonies, or are
No,
you
I
talking
mean
about
within the
physical?
physical world,
Okay.
our reality is made up of an E8 lattice, and it's a construct which can be manipulated by phenomena. When UAP appear in the sky and you're doing quantum analysis in regarding the E8 lattice interference because of the manifestation of UAP, it's like it gives way. It goes, oh, go on then. I'll just give way and you can appear. And the problem thing is that when they demanifest, they leave a hole, but it gets quickly filled back up, 2 or 3 days, and it's gone. But you can measure the gravitational distortion in that location because there's a void there. I mean, in a
So
hole like this, there's always something, gravity waves, light particles. But when it disappears, there's a vacuum, a gravity well. It can be measured and we're using time displacement meters to measure that. And we're getting this, latencies in those locations,
You got me
measurements.
stuck on the lattice, so I just had to do a quick search. And from what I'm
E8,
seeing,
yeah.
it's the what's the you know who does a good example of it is I've never heard it termed as the E8 lattice though. I've always seen it as fractalizing the different plutonic solids into a sphere.
This is the
Um,
kind of modern term now.
Dan
Yeah.
Winter does a really good job discussing that. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if you're familiar with him.
Yes, I am very well familiar. And there is actually a very good video out on YouTube explaining the E8 lattice in layman terms so people can
Hmm.
understand what it consists of. It's absolutely incredible, what the mechanism of how reality has been constructed for, in a sense. And and then it's not such a surprise when we talk about the double slit and experiment that when we're looking at something, it acts different. Even if we're looking at a UAP in the sky, they probably know they're being watched. You know, I mean, that's the whole point. Why did it have all these lovely lights on and brightness in the night sky? They had no lights, you wouldn't know they were there
I
because they
almost
want
think
to
those
be
are somewhat
observed. It
artif
seeks to be seen, doesn't it?
well, it's almost like an artifact too. Like even an infrared light with enough space-time distortion comes across as visible, or even like something in extreme high energy with enough space-time
Yes, it would.
distortion becomes visible.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's,
You
you know, I don't want to get too far. I'm still on the resonating chamber
That's
because
okay. That's all right. Let's
you went
not.
to you went to the third type, and that had to do with inducing a theta state, I believe, was the third
Yes.
type of chamber you were mentioning. And maybe
Yes.
that's the one that we're somewhat focusing on, is that
Yes.
effect.
Yes. Well, if you can sustain yourself in a location, but we only got usually 4 minutes, so we have to artificially produce terahertz then. And that requires very specialized, expensive bulbs to generate the terahertz frequency. And it's easy to generate the ohm because that's the frequency, it's just no frequency. To generate the terahertz is a bit tricky. It can be done, it's an expensive way. But generating the two frequencies which oscillate, you've got to conduct the experiments under those conditions
Yep.
and sustain it, make it sustainable. If you do, you will see how it's affecting the human mind. And before you know it, you are, I don't know, a bit like having a DMT situation
Yep.
going on, you know, and communicating with all sorts of things.
I've
Um,
had to
this is,
I've
I
had to try
think,
to
our
talk.
ancient ancestors were doing this. They were geared better than us. I mean, what we live in a poisonous world now, Alexei. What we eat, breathe, drink, everything. We're not pure anymore. Our ancient ancestors were so much more than we were. They were ready. They were tuned for this. We're not. We're having not to learn something new by going forward. We've got to learn something new by going backwards and realizing what it is.
Correct. And so you mentioned the idea of spiritual technologies, but you also mentioned the idea of going in these chambers and wounds tend to heal like almost 10 times
10
faster or
times
something like
faster.
that.
Yeah,
So
incredible.
I would call that the fifth dimensional energy coming in. Like your lamin. I don't know what other word to use other than laminarizing because there's either turbulent energy or there's laminar energy,
You're
right?
right.
So
Yeah,
you're laminarizing
absolutely.
the energy.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
science knows this, but they don't want to utilize it because they can't cost it. They can't put a price on it. So they stick to the other methods of it. But it's there and it was being utilized all over the world for many
so
different things.
do you think those points are isolated to that position of space and time to where they only work for those 4 minutes, or that potentially it drifts away and that you could follow it? Like, say I was in a truck that had a mobile acoustic resonating chamber, could I
You could.
follow
Of
this
course you could.
point?
Yeah, of course you could follow it. This is why we have resonant chambers, not just in one country, we're all over the world. So in a sense, they are following it. But I mean, for that small duration of time coming into the chamber, because it's designed to hit the central part of the chamber. It's designed to concentrate the light to a central part, and that's where that person would be sat, the one that's going to be adversely affected. Of course, you've
The,
got the outer ring, and you basically it's like a double knock system in a sense of speaking.
I think the greatest challenge is that the solar system is so big. And so to reproduce something of that nature in like a little box, I mean, how can you reproduce the power of the sun or the power of the alignment of planets?
Well,
I
we can
don't,
only we can only produce the terahertz frequency, sunrise and sunset, by specialized bulbs. So that's what we would require. coming into the chamber. Now it had to be flooded into the chamber, so we'd have to be magnified to come into the chamber, the central part of the chamber, at the same time as the ohm. The ohm can be easily generated.
Right. With
Then you
just
can
two,
conduct
with
your
even the one
tests.
speaker, right? Or two speakers, you can recreate the ohm.
Well, we tend to use Atmos because Atmos it's not it's bouncing the waves where it needs to bounce them. It's that was the whole point of resonance chamber is to have that direct bounce to the central platform of where that individual would be. So they're getting the full whack in a sense of speaking.
Of course. No,
Yes.
definitely.
So that's the
Um,
whole point of doing that. It can be, and it can be sustained. You can keep it and you can conduct experiments under those conditions. Now, what people tend to forget is you've got to take in consideration the land, the geomagnetics, and the positive magnetics as well, because a lot of resonant chambers lie in positive magnetic regions, but they swell and then go small and swell.
right.
It's like a heartbeat. It's going like this. Or even over time, they drift. Over thousands of years, they may have moved. Because magnetics always do. But
Well, I mean,
we
our
tend
poles
to,
are moving around right now, right? The North Pole is, I
yeah,
think they're adjusting every 10 years, the
yeah, of course they
charts
are.
to match and
There's
yeah.
always that happening. So what we tend to find is a correlation between what you might refer to as the high strangeness, the most profound of these incidents when you got a cocktail of all sorts of stuff. High strangeness locations are usually plus 92 nanotesla. They're very high in positive magnetic regions. So you've got a direct correlation between high strangeness locations all around the world and the high magnetics. So there's a correlation there. So then we've realized that when we went back, in time, there was a discovery that correlation was recognized by the United States Air Force in 1983. There may be even earlier, maybe even earlier, but we know that there's reference to it in 1983. So they knew about the correlation between phenomena and location, geological location.
So do you
So there's
think that
this.
was just the geological location, or do you think they had already been practicing with technologies like Tesla invented, like the directed energy weapons, and they've been
Well,
practicing and refining the weaponry?
it absolutely for sure in modern times we've added to that. But there is an ancient, if you go back in before we had the technologies, we can see the correlation between the positive magnetics and the deities. I mean, you talk about a
Right,
cave in
right.
Botswana, and you can see the correlations where these things are taking place. But we've certainly added to that. Absolutely, yeah, of course we are. I mean, they know how to stimulate phenomena, basically, to
Well, the
entice it.
God helmet, right, is an example of that. Doesn't
Yeah.
Trey Hudson use that in
Well,
his in the
Trey's
Meta?
used the God helmet. We had a conversation about this because when I used to come out and talk about God helmet experiments with Persinger, um, I I know about the effects that can happen, not necessarily always does, but it's a two-way door. So as you leave yourself open, you are can be something can invite themselves in, and it has happened on a couple of occasions. That was enough for me to say, I don't think it's the right way to do it. And if you are going to do it, it has to be done very professionally. There has to be protocols because most people just want to come along, stick it on and switch it on. They
Right.
don't think about what the safety protocols. Trade does deal with the safety protocols. He's doing it absolutely right as it should be. But by telling people that, should we use God helmets and stuff, we've got to make sure that they do utilize these protocols of safety because it's a two-way door, and you open yourself up, you stimulate, and you could invite something in. And yes, before you know it, you might have some occupation, but there is other experiments, of course. I mean, most of it usually lies in regarding deprivational of, your hearing, light and stuff, and trying to induce the theta brainwave state.
So I had a quick question. So is that what the question in question form is? What's the deal with the witching hour? The answer might be, well, that's the circadian rhythm, and that's when we naturally go into theta. So that's just humans' natural theta moment
It
is
is,
that
yeah.
essential.
Yeah. I mean,
Do you have any thoughts on that or?
well,
Hi, everybody. I want to take a second today to talk to you about our sponsor, Shogun Farms. Their innovation and sustainability to the max. What they do is they get invasive wild boar species from across Florida and turn it into a USDA approved protein packed meat with all kinds of different cuts, flavors, juices. Mmm, it's absolutely fantastic. So check them out, shogunfarms.com. Thanks.
what's the difference? Well, you know what? I've had the 3 o'clock experiences. Um, if you talk to the church, they'll say it's a demonic associated because it's a mockery of the Trinity. It's a mockery of the crucifixion of Christ. Um, that's what they're, but it's more than that. You know, I mean, I've had the 3 o'clock. Most people do. I mean, when you do the research, you find out why are so many people having 3 o'clock experiences all around about that time anyway. And it is profound. Now, it is also the time when most people would be asleep. So nighttime visitations, yes, I can get that. It's also what you mentioned about the theta, most likely being, in that state. Maybe there is something to it, but you know what? If it's 3 a.m. here, it's not on the other side of the world. So
Correct.
it's not a global thing, is it?
No.
It's a tricky one. I would have to say it's got to be something more about frequencies, maybe the universe. Maybe it's something about us changing consciously at those certain times. Maybe it's a cycle and we are consciously put into an area where we had inadvertently not knowing that open more likely to have experiences under those conditions. There's lots about ourselves, about conscious wise, we don't understand. We may be certain rhythms and cycles that we just don't get until you look at the patterns. Yes, there's definitely something there, but we just haven't got the answer for it at this moment. But it's common for sure. A lot of people do have those experiences.
The only thing I could really think of is, I mean, we have the circadian rhythm, and that's when it takes us into that theta state, basically, is
Yeah,
around that time.
yeah.
Um, and so if we know
It's all
that the
part and
phenomenon,
parcel. Yeah, it's all got to do with it. I mean, we can't exactly put our finger on it and say it's this. We can certainly illuminate a number of things and say, okay, well, you know, that's when paralysis takes place mostly.
right,
It's with phenomena. I mean, people have paralysis all the time when they go into REM. The phenomena is not delivering paralysis; it's just delivering the mechanism of stimulation for our bodies to induce paralysis because we end up with paralysis every time we go into REM.
correct.
Input blockade and output blockade. The button's already in there. All they need is stimulating, and that's what the phenomena can do. Stimulate it. It doesn't have to do anything special. Just stimulate the parts of the brain, and we are stuck in paralysis. Until we're released. So there is two sides. I mean, I do know people do have night terrors. People do have paralysis. They experience those sort of things, but the phenomenon is utilizing the same mechanism. And I guess that it's a method of control in many, especially in the abduction phenomena, not just the abduction phenomena, in the incubus phenomena, in the demonic phenomena, in some of the paranormal cases. It's been reported, and it's been reported right across the scope of many various different phenomena. What is interesting, though, that recent surveys looking at the world of the phenomena, the world of anomalous phenomena, we've got some amazing pieces of computer software out there now, incredible computers. And there was one such system, I think it was called the CRS system, and it ran for 3 years. And they put all as much data as they possibly could in. I mean, every feasible anomaly, from crop circles to cryptids, UFOs, mythology, paranormal, supernatural, you name it.
Right.
Because they wanted this very clever AI type computer to come up with the answers. What is it all about? What's responsible? And come the day when they thought, yeah, okay, it's been about 3 years and we put all this data in. Let's put the commands in to see, the questions and see what it comes out. Press the button, expecting loads and loads of reams of stuff to come out. And it wasn't, it was just like a couple of paragraphs. It was just quite comical. But it was interesting what was on on these things, these two paragraphs. The first one was considering the data, it looked through all the data and it came up and said they believe the phenomena or phenomenon, because it could be all one, we're classing it as all individual, has the capability of creating physiological constructs. Well, I'm a physiological construct. This chair, the room, everything's a physiological construct. But they seem to be able to manipulate and create. I mean, we know that they can walk through walls. Apparitions do. They can walk through a wall. So they're not solid, but then they can prod you. So they are physical. Or, be these, NHI, non-human intelligence. They come through walking through the wall, come through the ceiling, come through the window and pick you up. You say, so the metaphysical phenomena, so they can switch. They can steer, guide reality into manipulating if they're physical or non-physical. And that's the same for the UFO stuff, the UAP. That's why,
Yep.
we in these think tanks we're talking about. Well, that's interesting. We've got a 737 and it's at 36,000 feet. An object comes past within 14 meters. The whole aircraft should have shook upside down. No wake, no air wakes, no sonic booms, no splashes into the water because they're not physical at the time. But when they want to become physical, they can land, they can leave marks on the ground, there's physicality to them, but it seems they can manipulate that. So we're talking spiritual phenomena. UAP falls under the banner of spiritual phenomena. So this is why, obviously, you've got a lot of people talking at the top end now about spiritual technologies. Some of these
Yep.
crafts, I mean, I was informed in one of these think tanks that one of these crafts came down near a US Air Force base near Nellis, and it sat out there for 7 hours. Nobody knew what to do. And it sat there with the door open, inviting. Eventually, they go in, there's nobody there. And the thing is, there's not even any instruments. There's no buttons, no flashy lights, no guidance system. There's just, hey, we've gifted you this, as technologists, because the gifting fields are recognized as. And sometimes phenomena does that to help us, you know.
It'll give you part of the puzzle, right? But it doesn't want to ever give you the engine.
Oh no, never does. I mean, it did that
Right.
with the Vril Society back when they were dealing with the Aldebarans, in German. And of course, they were passing the information on to the SS, and they was going to the specialists and the scientists are trying to manufacture anti-gravity, a few different versions, and they did pretty well, but they never got the full picture. I mean, they never, they did get them off the ground, but they didn't have superior flight. They never gave them the full picture. They never do.
I've got a question. I'm not sure if I've ever heard you talk about them or very many people. So, no big deal if you've never heard of them. Have you ever heard of John Searle,
Yes,
uh, inventor of what they call like the levity disk?
yes,
What are
yeah.
your thoughts on that? Because apparently he learned all that from dreams, and then spent
I
his entire
agree.
life basically making the
It's,
thing
yeah,
real.
so many people. Yes, there are different methods. I mean, Brown did the same thing. He got a lot of his stuff from dreams. David Adair, rocket genius,
Yep.
1973, 8,420 mile an hour. They didn't
I
even
love
see
listening
it.
to him talk. I've listened to many of his,
They didn't even see it lift off. But what was interesting with the military people there, they didn't expect a double blowback. And of course, when a rocket takes off so fast, you're going to get an explosion. So there's the blowback. But then there was a second one that totally took them by surprise because it left so fast, it punched a vacuum between space and Earth. And that doubled down back to Earth and caused it a huge one.
that
It
snap. Yeah.
it, it took the roof off houses. Some cows went flying and all sorts of different things. And most of the people ended up on the ground and they were very surprised. How did he get that information? comes in dreams. In fact, when he came over to the UK as a lad when he was about 18 and 19, he met Stephen Hawking. And he walked into Stephen Hawking's office and you can imagine he's got all these equations on the
Right.
board. And he says, I don't think this bit's right. And Hawking looked at this young lad who was about 18 and went, what do you mean? And he goes over, because he was always quite abrupt, goes like this, starts rubbing out. And he's like, oh my God, what are you doing? Oh, no,
Right.
no. And he said, just wait with it. And he's like, there. And Hawkins looks at this and goes, how do you know this? He says, well, that's rocket engineering. He says, where do you get your information from? Hawkins asked him. He says, I get it in dreams.
Yeah.
And Hawkins turned around and says, interesting, I get it in dreams as well. Let's sit down and have a conversation. Inventors, Oberth, space rocket engineering specialists, so many. Jack Parsons, even, it's, through different, but there's different ways. I mean, of course, some of it's gifted through dreams, dream info. Some of it's waking state downloaded. So you get a
Correct.
download. Some of them get it as DVP, direct voice phenomena. And some people induce it through ritualistic or esoteric practices, communication, open up in the communication channels
Right.
with these things, and they're gifting information. So when I realized after some of the research that came out regarding Dr. Diana Pasulka and Tim Taylor's information that he shared with her, they are doing launches, NASA launches, Euro space agencies, all sorts of different ones. Look, we don't realize how many are going up there, but there's a lot. And there are ceremonial launches, and they've got sigilization on them. They've got ancient Latin and strange markings and all sorts of stuff. And it's ceremonial launches at certain times, in certain places, and even certain high-ranking people, which are part of that ceremonial launch. And why do they do it? Well, when Pasulka asked Tim Taylor, why? Why? Who's up there to see it? And he says, well, our sponsors. He says, the ones that helped us get to the stars. Again, it's a methodology of paying homage and worship to them. Now, I don't know. It's like they're like deities in the sense of speaking, godly abilities, gifting and helping humanity. But at the same time, you've got the ones which run wild and do all sorts of things. And that's why it has that occult esoteric connection with this phenomenon. And it does work because we know it's like putting a seance on steroids when you do things
Right.
like that. It does attract them very, very quickly, but it's very abrupt. I don't think they like it so much. It's like banging at the door. So when we did our experiments, which ran for 10 years, it took us 2 years to reach that level through the safe, normal
Right.
protocol way. Otherwise, we don't want to have having some issues with phenomena. So we had to do it the safe way. It took us 2 years. But I was told if we went down the esoteric path, the occult aspect of this, we could have got it maybe within 48 hours. So you can see how people get so reactive for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where everything I've learned. I'm also an experiencer. I'm sure we've talked about that a little bit, but
Yeah.
everything I've learned has come to me through dream states, and there's always been at least maybe a 3 month, not necessarily a ritual, but routine that I have to follow before I get the next 3 month routine, essentially. And
Yes.
for example, one of them was walking on a handrail of a fishing pier, which is about a 20-minute walk to the end and back. And so I would walk on the handrail with double nunchucks. I did it every morning. And the next step is obvious, and you follow the line. So I've been like learning
Yes.
meditation. It's a way to connect your
It's a,
conscious mind to your
it's focusing
subconscious.
your intent. That's what it's doing. That's really
Exactly. And so that was like a walk the line lesson, essentially.
yes.
Focus, pinpoint focus,
That's
100%.
exactly what you're
Exactly.
doing. It's your mind, you're focusing the intent. That there are different methods of doing this. People have
Yeah.
done so many different things, but it all results in focused intent at the end
But
of the
so
day.
the lessons changed, and you get to a point, and that's what I think you're saying is you can comfortably get to a place where you're comfortable and you can choose to go further or not to go further. You
Yes.
have more control over your experience with the phenomenon.
Well,
In
yes, I
quotes.
mean we can. I mean we work, myself and Nathaniel and a few other researchers, we walk the perimeter line and we have 1 foot in the camp,
Right.
but we can always take the 1 foot out, if you understand. We know what
Yep.
it's like to have 2 feet in there because, sometimes it has trapped back home. It's been hell. It's been put us through so many problems that, yeah, we've overindulged. We shouldn't have. And you learn what's the safe, how to, you can sort of gain information without actually being fully involved. The problem is once you do that and you overindulge yourself, I mean, some of these have started innocently with seances, like the skull experiment that took place in the UK in the 1990s. And then it went on to the Norfolk experiment, advanced skull experiment in Scotland, and then Phenomena Project, which was ours in Manchester. So that process, you can communicate through the same process with NHI, with non-human intelligence, the same as spiritual phenomena. It's just like a layers of onion. There's
Right.
different layers. But when you get to that top layer, you can just stay there without going too far. If you do want the next, just one more step, they're in. They're in. And
Yep.
then you've lost control of your circle. You can't close the circle down. They're in. They're in control. And then they're following you back home and all sorts of different things. So it's just knowing that mechanism, and it takes a long time. I mean, I've been doing it for 42 years, well, so it's learning that it's a very delicate mechanism. Now, this is what happened at Skinwalker Ranch, or should we say Sherman Ranch, back in the day with Bigelow, Robert
Before, right.
Bigelow, and the Nids. I mean, now he's coming out and saying, "Oh God, I wish we never did some of the experiments. We should have. We got into the esoteric stuff, or maybe some of the occult stuff because it was being reactive." Well, of course it will. You just put it on stimulants. The thing is, though, once you enter that, you've not got your protocols. They didn't know about protocols. They didn't know they were going to get followed back home, and it literally ruins some of their lives. Some of this phenomena.
You know what? A topic I wanted to talk about a little bit was ports, but then you were talking about Skinwalker or Sherman Ranch. Do you think? I don't recall there being any ports in Sherman Ranch there or Skinwalker.
That's because it's never been reported. There was
Right.
poltergeist disturbances, and during whilst the Shermans were there, they always all locked all the cupboards down. They kept the dogs in at night because something was causing the dogs to be deceased very quickly within 30 to 60 seconds in some cases. So they kept the dogs inside. At night, they locked all the cupboard doors and in the kitchen and stuff because things were always moving, disappearing, and all sorts of strange things. So you had poltergeist phenomena for sure. Bigelow got there. And when about maybe 3 or 4 months in, he started doing certain experiments, and they did have apport phenomena. In fact, it was the Rubik's Cube. Yeah, they had a Rubik's Cube apport, and they utilized something else, which they
Huh.
had apports from. So yes, that report. I mean, I know what went on, but the report has never been out. John Alexander sits on that report with his wife Victoria. They're not going to release it. But really, they could do because we're talking about the same stuff. There's
Right.
no harm in talking about that sort of thing. Maybe that they don't want it to be looked upon that they did go down that occult side of things to
I think
see
that's
if
been
it could
kept out of
excite it. It's been
yeah, I
kept
think,
out of it, yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
100%. The cult conversation has been
They're
kept out.
scientists. They're
Yeah.
they're looking for a responsive a reaction. So they're trying so many different things to gain a response. And then when they do get any response, they clamp onto it and go full at it then. And that was unfortunately the esoteric occult side of things.
Well, one thing you've mentioned in several of your videos is how you can remove the apport from someone's home and you can lock it up essentially. And now that room where the apport is starting to experience phenomenon. The people they lose the phenomenon for 2 or 3 days, but then it's almost like the apport realize or the phenomenon
Yeah.
realizes, hey, it's no longer with that person, so it shifts
Yes.
back over.
It's like mass confusion. I mean, we've always had this mindset, and really, we don't know where it comes from, but it's just a stereotypical mindset of what we people believe for no reason whatsoever. Poltergeist phenomena. Now, in the UK, we've got about maybe, I don't know, 96 recorded episodes throughout history of poltergeist. It's reached the press and stuff. Does now the average individual is going to say, well, there's 96 different poltergeists then. And that's our thinking. Or what if the poltergeist is a mechanism of interaction? In other words, is that it's a source. I mean, it's interesting when a poltergeist, when we start to press on the poltergeist phenomena, that what it does is it picks something from that environment and puts it in a house 5 doors away. Person 5 doors away starts getting apports. And he's thinking, where have these come from? Well, he doesn't know they've come from 5 doors away where the poltergeist phenomena is taking place. And it sent apports over, and then it leapfrogged the phenomena over to where the apports were. It was
Yep.
utilizing the apports as a quantum anchor. So when we got into talking, and I mean, Nathaniel Gillis has got the same results as I have from priest exorcists, apports are regurgitated through possession cases, when they're trying to rid them. The phenomenon is so determined to keep itself in the environment, starts regurgitating stuff out of the individuals, screws and
Right.
they've
That
not,
they never ate or anything, right? So
no,
there's no reason a screw would be the
they
person's
know there's
stomach.
nothing inside them. They haven't eaten for such a long time, and all of a sudden, all this stuff's coming up. Well, they take them and get them out of the environment quick because what is the phenomenon doing? It's trying to anchor itself to the environment.
Interesting. Yeah.
So it's happening in those incidents. So we realised, I wonder what happens if we relocate the apport. Turns out we have a location to put the apports in. It's under lock and key. I've got the key, but I can't put the apports in there because we don't take them home. And when you go in and I've got the key and open it, the things moved around, stuff on the floor and all sorts of stuff. So
Hmm.
things have been happening in there, and it's because the phenomenon is following the anchor, following the quantum anchor, it's following the apport. But then maybe 2 or 3 days later, it must go. Oh, I mean, I expect. I'm trying to envisage poltergeist phenomena isn't the intelligence isn't there. It's just set up a mechanism, and I'm going about doing my business. I know where phenomena is being delivered to because the anchors, the quantum
Right.
anchors.
So that led me to an idea. Potentially, so let's just say you remove the apport. So now it's locked away in a different room. And the reason it likes to, it figures it out. It figures out, hey, this got moved. I'm no longer with the person I'm trying to. Can you trick the phenomenon by putting DNA samples of the individual, by putting hair of the individual in there? Maybe by making a sound, it makes it sound like the person's still around the apport. Do you think there'd be a way to trick the apport to thinking it's still with the person?
I know what you're saying. Yes,
Yeah.
we we haven't actually got to that yet. But it's a great idea. The problem is that everything is so deliverable and so fast acting because so they tend to realize within 2 or 3 days. I mean, people ring me up and said, "Have you got rid of it?" I said, "I've got rid of what?" The poltergeist. I said, "I can't just get rid of poltergeist. It don't work like that. Why?" Well, we haven't had anything for 2 or 3 days. Since when? Since you've been? Since you took the airport way. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's back.
It goes
So
back, yeah.
there's a temporary confusion with the phenomenon, which we like to do because it's the paranormal mechanics. We like to throw our sabots into the works and cause some upset. It's just working out the mechanism. But what was really interesting is the fact that we came up with a theory that the apport that has appeared is not the original. And I'll tell you the reasons why, because I've actually got one item here which I can show you. And this is a pot cat. Now, the pot cat, it's collectible. Now, the woman and the with her husband were having a big argument. There it is. It's a pot cat. It's a collectible, and it's an apple.
Nice.
It's an apple. Okay. Now she collects pot cats, and they cost quite a bit of money, and they're quite nice. Having an argument because having poltergeist stuff going on. So the problem with poltergeist film, it causes vexation and stress. You're not sleeping properly because of the audible disturbances. Before you know it, husband and wife are at each other. Just
Right.
just with all the stress. So husband picks up one of her collection of pot cats, opens the back door, throws it out in anger, hits the concrete flags, shatters. 5 minutes later, that's back on the shelf. They go outside, it's not there. Would have been a
Right.
thousand pieces. Where's it gone? So has it reassembled itself and appeared there 5 minutes later. Is it the same one? Well, maybe not, because we had the same with a with an urn. It's a pet urn. There it is. It's a little pet urn. Yeah, for a budgie, a little
Yeah,
bird. And I ported and looked all over for it. Turned out in the refrigerator, of all places, right in the middle of the shelf. And she'd been in there a few times to get the milk out to have some coffee or whatever. There it was. So she kept hold of that. And then I said, well, I better take that back with me. I don't want to keep it in the environment. It's a quantum anchor light, you know. So I kept hold of it. Sometime later, she was having some work done in the house and had the wall knocked down. So she got builders in, knocking the wall down. And in the wall cavity was the urn. Right. So she rings me up. She says, you're never going to believe this, Steve. I said, what? He said, the urn, have you still got it? I said, yeah. I said, well, there's one in the wall. I said, what do you mean? Well, he said, there's one in the wall. And this is this is crazy. Yeah, because I have to show you this. Yeah, let's get it out of the bag. Um, this is the one, it was in the wall.
yeah.
Okay. And she looked at it, she said, well, that's me urn. So I said, well, if that's your urn, what's that one?
So now you have two.
Now we have two urns. So was the original disappeared and replaced with a quantum anchor, which is manufactured. Now, when we went back to initially for the first investigations we ever did, we analysed a mug, an apported mug, against, I mean, it was a set of four, and we had another mug exactly the same.
Right. I think we talked about
Yeah.
this one before. Yeah.
It was not the same mug, and yet you would never know. So I was dealing some very clever trickery or quantum anchors. I mean, I talked to a person only a few months ago, and she said, Steve, I've moved to do two different countries. The phenomena's still following me. I said, what type of phenomenon? She said, is it poltergeist stuff? She said, yeah. You can't get away from it. Said, no, that often happens, haunted people, not haunted places. So, well, what is it? It's tying me to it. And I sat there thinking, and I had no idea why or certain people just followed. And then it suddenly dawned on me, I wonder if these are apports or a ring or an earring.
They
You
can
just
be
would never
replaced
know. Yeah,
ultimately, right?
you'd
Yeah.
never know,
That's what I
So
was about to say is I don't think I've ever I've experienced phenomenal stuff since I'm 5 years old, something like that, but I've never had an apport, but how do I know?
you would not know. I
Right.
mean, it could be a good way to deliver phenomena to you. For
Right.
sure. I mean, why would they want to be there 24/7? If they've got a lot of other things to do, they can put a marker in there and let it do its business. There's a mechanism of deliverance of phenomena, and that can be interrupted and dispersed by the activities of Catholic priests. And then the phenomena realizes and starts regurgitating things into that location on purpose. And they knew, the Vatican priests knew this. They said, we know the mechanism. And I thought, you know this. We only discovered it recently and said, oh no, we know this, they said. And I thought, well, that's fascinating.
Well, I get the idea too of imprinting, right? If you're into psionics or you study people that are into psionics, they can become connected to different items. And if you put
Yeah,
an item in a room or something, you can almost use it as a cue. Someone just entered the room or
sure. Yeah.
it's very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, psionics is a big thing, different methodologies. Some of them a bit clandestine, especially when utilizing children and trauma, which I don't think some of these
Right.
certain governmental programs or specialist programs which are doing, it's not right. And this is what you might call the gate programs. Danny Sheehan's talked about this as well, researcher. But there's, the psionic thing is that it's not new, it's old. I mean, SRI were doing this years ago, the
Right.
Research Institute. It's part of the process of the remote viewing and all sorts of different things. There's that aspects of, again, getting into the theta process of the mind and focusing. But they become very impatient rather than running the normal methods of experiments.
Correct.
It's like, let's just grab them, force them to see if have they got some gifts, and if so, we're going to force them in. They become very impatient, and I tell you the reasons why. I've been told the reasons why is because it's about weaponizing. They
Right.
want to be able to manifest a bomb. That's the truth. They want to manifest a bomb over a city in a second, not deliver it. It doesn't need to if it can be delivered through a mechanism of apportation.
Wow. No,
This
I
is
mean,
what
I know
I've been
that
told.
sounds,
You know, it
yeah,
sounds
it
absolutely crazy, but they
that's the
knew this.
extreme. Yeah.
Yeah, they knew this that, when back in the days when we're talking about implants, it started off with scarring of tissue and stuff and replacement of implants. And then it stopped. And then they realized the implants are inside them, but there's no point of entrance. How are they getting inside them? And I talked to specialist Daryl Sims and I said, Daryl, I've got a case, a poltergeist case, where the boy's got a small piece of Lego in his leg and he had to go to hospital to have it removed. There was no point of entrance. It apported
Right.
into his leg. He said, Steve, it's the same thing as the apports are in implants. The implants are going into people from the phenomena now without no point of entrance. He says it's the same phenomena. And I said, okay, that's very interesting. So you start looking at that, and that's been going on for a long time. You start realizing if we can create a manifestation of a physical object, then why not? Why can it not be a weapon? It could
Right. And
easily.
maybe that's what led to so much of the recent, not recent, but maybe within the last 50 years or so since it came out the Russians were doing remote viewing experiments, right? So now all of a sudden the Americans want to catch up. Well, how are we going to catch up if they're that far ahead? We need to
It
do
was
drastic
always the
measures.
Russians. They were well ahead. The CIA, I was always playing catch up.
Right.
But the Russians, some of the Germans were involved, but mostly the Russians were doing all the psyop, but all that type of stuff. And the CIA got wind of it and and followed suit. It's a big chess game, a big poker game, really, and it goes backwards and forwards. But somebody always wants to get the upper hand. The thing is, they seemingly want to weaponize phenomenon. If they can
Mhm.
weaponize phenomenon, then
Anything.
we're
They weaponize anything, right?
absolutely weaponized
Right.
first. And this is why I giggle sometimes about disclosure, because that means you've got to be disclosed. And if you disclose it, all the other countries know. So no way.
Okay. So now we're talking about spiritual technologies and we're talking about doing scientific experiments. I mean, is spiritual technologies of the past for the last 50 years, 60 years, have they all been classified projects for the most part?
A lot. Yes, a lot of them. I mean, look, they
Right.
went through different phases of different things, but now what we're realizing is that the communication, you can communicate directly with the source. The craft is part of the phenomena, as well as the occupants was in it. Some of them not even occupied, some of them sentient, in a sense.
That's
So
what
you
you were
could have
saying before. You think it's all one source, one
there's a
one construct,
source, yeah,
essentially.
because
Yeah.
it came out because of the connectivity between all phenomena. The computer system said it's deliverable it's coming from a source. Now we don't know what that source is. We could say God, but then which God? And
God's God.
the
That's
problem
my it's
that's
my
that's
bad
just
joke. Yeah.
yeah, it's that this is where we have the situation where it is being delivered by a source. Now, the source has godly abilities. If you can go back in time and you can see a reported phenomena, walking on water, going through walls, bursting into flames, becoming a ball of light, levitating, bilocating people, changing reality around people, and making them put them into a virtual reality environment.
Right.
It's all godly ability. It's everything that you might read in the Bible and more. The problem is that where do we draw the line between, okay, so what is God and what is these godly ability beings? Are they the fallen ones or the angels or who knows? The problem is that it's easier to say what it might not be. It is not demonic, but it does utilize archetypes of demons for sure, because you might think
Right.
it's one, therefore I am one. There's a
Well,
long
I think that's
tradition of
also a
that.
lack of understanding, just to call everything a demon.
Yeah, of course
To
it
me, that
is.
just reminds me of like it's a sea monster. It's like, well, that's actually a giant squid, or that was a whale, or that was a great white shark. Or
Yeah.
I don't think we've defined it good enough. But if it ever truly is one source, then it's going to be there's that next level that we need to figure out.
Well, it's going to entwine. There's a lot of people, and the Catholic faith are responsible for that mostly. If they want to believe it's all demonic, then phenomenal appears. So, because it
Right.
just wants to you. If you go to other countries, Alexei, and they don't even know about certain belief systems, And you talk to them, they say, "Oh yeah, we know what those beings are, but we call them
Right.
this," and they act differently, and they don't do that. Oh right, where did he say they come from? Well, they tell you they came from, but you look at that being exactly the same for in the Western world and the Eastern world, and you say, hang on a second, why are they saying they're coming from two completely different places? If you actually look on the listings now, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of planets they keep calling them coming from. Oh, coming from here, coming from Venus one time, the moon,
And that right,
even
right.
Mars.
Yep.
It keeps getting further and further out in space now.
Now it's
Um,
Orion,
it
the
is.
Pleiades.
It is, yeah, and it's like that one liner, oh well, we're concerned about planet Earth, but won't do nothing to help it. Or we're
Correct.
concerned about humanity and won't do nothing to save us,
Yeah.
all the religious wars that go on. No, it seems the planet is important to them, and we are important to them to a point where they don't interfere, they don't. I mean, hey, they have done a few times in the past, in ancient times, when they've scared things in certain ways. We know that from the days of Alexander the Great and Moses and all sorts of different things. The workers
Hmm.
of gods, which were represented by the horns, funny enough, which is higher than the halo, if you're a direct worker for God. But it's interesting that when you look at this, it's age old. The phenomena has so many different masks, but if you don't look at it, don't even stare at it, don't take it on board, just look at the data of what happened. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's little elves in a flying basket over Ireland in 1504, or it's a flying saucer of alien beings coming out in 1982. It's forget what you're seeing. It's all about what did they do, and that's the mechanism. You start to see, the phenomenon stays the same, but the mask is
Yeah.
forever changing.
That reminds me of something that Grant Cameron would say a lot. He'd always say it's the wow factor. So
Yeah,
no matter which time you're in, it's basically trying to instill that wow into you. Like, oh wow, what's that next thing? And then once we
always.
understand that, well, wow, what was that? Or
Yeah, I mean, we are stuck in this. We've had plenty of transitions in archetypes over the years. The alien grey seems to be the heaviest at the moment. But then look at where we are now. I mean, before we had the alien grey, okay, we didn't have the internet.
right.
Now, the internet, you say, look, if you pull out a child in school and say, what's an alien? What does an alien look like? They'll draw an alien grey, I'm guarantee the face.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So it's in the consciousness 24/7, every day, all over the internet, and how it is the most common archetype that's going to be produced because that lies in the mind of the individuals. But then when there is a shift and there is a change, and and you think, oh well, what about for nuns and priests? Oh well, they're seeing apparitions of Danu or Hathor or Isis or the Lady. Well,
Right.
this is why you've got the norms document come out in November last year, because the Vatican were in panic because they're saying, hang on a second, there are false apparitions, false religious apparitions out there. The phenomenon is generating false apparitions. How do we measure discernment? Who's going to do that for us?
That is what I was going to ask. I mean, so when are they going to say, well, it's actually a real angel, not a false apparition?
Well, that's down to the practitioner. That's down to the individuals, the bishop or a cardinal, who's going to fall onto his shoulders to say, okay, I will determine if this is, in fact,
Right.
religious. Now, the thing is that it can be done. Your body reacts differently under those certain conditions. If you have a spiritual, religious encounter or experience, your body doesn't go into hyper mode, doesn't go into alert, doesn't go
Correct.
crazy.
Yeah.
It opens it up. You opens yourself up, your third eye, and all sorts of different things. But when it's something, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. You're looking at it in wonder, not knowing, but your body's screaming at you. Oh, get the hell out of there. It's fight or flight kicks in. It's telling you to run like hell. He
Yep.
wouldn't have that. So we have to rely on people who might recognize that. Certainly, certain priests, bishops, and cardinals, they want to take that responsibility over to sort of say, we'll decide on the discernment on some of these things now because it's getting out of control. We've got phenomena utilizing a new archetype here, and it's helpful. It's doing what it wants to do. It wants to engage with people, and if they've got that religious belief, then it was taking that on board. It is interesting how that they take what is here into reality. you know.
Well, and that's where if there wasn't physical data, it would be so easy to just to write it off as everyone's just hallucinating and that this is a big mass hysteria effect.
Yeah.
But since there's actual physical data associated with it, it just leaves people to question, you know?
It's the same for the craft, Alexei. I mean, if you go back
Yeah,
to the Fatima, the Miracle of Sun incident, there's 70,000 people. What they don't tell you is that some people saw a second sun. Some people saw a craft. Some people
right.
saw Virgin Mary. Some people ran in fear, literally ran in fear. Some people dropped to the knees in prayer. It affected people differently because they experienced it differently because of what they believed it might to be. The photographs, there were three tripods up there, and the Vatican's were taking photographs. They ended up in the government, and they classified them until 1953. From 1917 to 1953, they didn't even get out until 53. They
It
classified them.
showed a big sun, didn't it? The photos,
Yeah,
I'm trying to.
you've got the sun, but then you've got an object. You've got two, and I've actually got the Vatican analysis of the photographs, and there's a second light source coming from that object. You can tell from the
Right.
analysis. So they knew it was physically there in a sense, casting light and on photograph.
And then
But
they also
people didn't
received
see it like that.
I'm trying to remember the Fatima. I want to make sure I have this event correct. There was three girls, and then they had telepathic download, and they were given three different
Yes,
sentences essentially or prophecies.
the three prophecies. Yes.
Right. And then two of them they released. The third one they didn't want to release for a long time or something. Or
No, no. I mean, the third one, yeah. There's lots of speculation about the prophecies and the assassination of a pope and all sorts of different things, but
hmm
but no, it's never really been released. To be honest with you, there's a lot of speculation around it. Um, but be honest with you, the Fatima incident, the miracle of the sun was significantly much more, and it wasn't just one incident. People think it was just one incident. It wasn't.
Well, they were told to come back the
Yeah,
next,
they put
like,
it into the newspapers.
right.
You only have
Okay.
70,000 people there, but you got 70,000 people. I mean, it's a phenomenal. Would love that. 70,000 people all watching, waiting for me. Of course
Right.
it was that, and
And
this is
that
what
I guess
look.
this almost leads me to a good a closing question potentially. Um, five people get around a table, they start practicing seances. It's very similar to a CE5 event. Now, what happens when you have an entire country following a disclosure movement? Is that practicing a giant seance in a way?
Yes.
So
Yeah,
is that
absolutely.
why there's this hesitancy as well to bring this information out, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, it's already out of control. I mean, if you look at the recent stats that came out from the Vatican, it was alarming. I mean, they said there's about 28.5 to 35.2% of people on the planet are Christian or Catholic.
Right.
The phenomena of we're talking about demonic oppression is around about 28%. Now, then you take into consideration, well, out of the 28.5 to 32 point whatever, which are Christians, how many of them are active? It seems the scales are tipping. A little bit of
Right.
concern about the scale tipping. There's so many people. I mean, look at, we had all the Epstein stuff that came out, and that got very dark about UAP and all sorts of stuff. That's just one of thousands of things which are out there. We know about these things. We follow these things, and we went, yeah, we know the pattern. It's been going on for a very, very long time. Anything that's negative, there's this association with a deity. You can make it more successful through ritual practice. Hey, look what Oppenheimer and the team did when they built the atomic bomb. What did they do? They went to Bohemian Grove, had a big party and a ritual practice. You make it successful. Oh, yes. Why did he do these things? I mean, it's not just them, all over the world. The people were doing this for wealth, health, success. I even, you can interview people, even singers in Hollywood and
Right.
actors, musicians. They've come forward and say, "Oh, well, you know what? I do this ritual practice and allow this this what entity to take over me to help me."
Yep.
Oh, and you know what? I had a friend that told me, he said he's a songwriter, and he said he knows a songwriter, and he said I was talking to him one night, and he said he was up in like Hollywood, like, and some guy came up and said, just, "Do you know what that song? I could make that pretty good for you. It can cost you like, but I can put it through a ritual practice, and might."
Right.
And you think, blimey, what the hell is going on in this world? So, yes, there is that side. It's always been there, but now it's being utilized for the wrong reasons. But then if this is what's growing in the background. The Vatican are aware of it, so they have to start generating plans how to deal with it, how to get us back on the road, because there does seem to be this little bit of a concern at the moment with them, and that led to having an in-house, massive in-house meeting with all the world's exorcists.
Right.
In regarding the amount of problems that we have in regarding possession. 5% of humanity, they were saying, people are possessed by the phenomena. And if they are right, then that's a bit concerning, really, especially nowadays because a lot of people have lost the path.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I'm gonna have to sit and think about that for at least like 5 hours now because I don't even know where to go now with my thoughts on that.
I don't.
How do you? And I think that's why that the occult side of things will never truly be disclosed. I think what they're focusing on is man-made technologies like Thomas Townsend Brown and John Searle, and they're trying to release the fact that we have these advanced technologies. I think it's a money grab for the Space Force.
Yes,
Um, but I don't
absolutely.
think they're really going to give us the true disclosure that has to do with the spiritual
No, what
technologies.
what we've got is a very partial, limited amount of non-disclosure in a sense of speaking. Look, if they really want some of the good stuff, then you're going to have to bring experiences in. Look, we can't deal with another pilot. It's just another witness. Oh, I saw something in the sky. Do you know people out there I talk to? They're not pilots. They don't work for the military. They don't work in the government. But their experiences supersede anything a pilot would ever experience. They
Yep.
need to be hand in hand with the experiencers. There's plenty of evidence for
That's
that.
what I find
And
so funny. You have people
yeah,
with titles. For example, it's amazing to be a fighter pilot. Like that great
yeah,
job becoming a fighter pilot, but you've never even some of them have never even seen a UFO.
yeah.
They ignore what the experiencers are saying and they
Oh,
think
yeah.
they're the expert in the field, right? And then it's the same with
Yes.
people in the government positions. Well, because I'm some type of scientific advisor to a university, I must know everything. Well, it's like you've never even experienced the phenomenon. You don't even know what angle to approach it. You have no idea what's happening.
They have no
Um,
idea. I mean,
yeah,
just to the lengths of understanding the capabilities or non-limitation to the phenomena is something that you probably would never want to disclose because you can't turn around and say, look, we can't protect you. The phenomenon is right under your nose 24/7. It can appear to at any given time. We can't do nothing. They control the skies. We haven't got the technology. We don't know a place where they come from. We've no
it's not
place
only
to
we can't
strike them.
protect you. It's not only we can't protect you, but potentially by instilling curiosity, we're putting you in danger.
It's true, actually. I mean,
Yeah.
statistics, just finishing on what you were saying there, in regarding the latest statistics, 98%, sorry, 78% up UFO sightings over the last year or two. Now, that's a phenomenal jump that humanity's never seen ever before. 78% more is an incredible amount. Why? Well, what happened was, I'll give you an example. We've got a Mr. They've got a nice couple, yeah, and they live in Atlanta. They're in the 70s, never witnessed a UFO, traveled around the world, looking out windows of aircraft, never seen a UFO, never thought about UFOs, never believed in UFOs until 2 years ago. And every
Right.
day they switched the television on UAP hearings, people talking about it, government talking about it, whistleblowers talking about it, the press talking about it. He couldn't get away with it. Eventually, he turns to his wife and said, "Do you know what? Maybe there's something to these UFOs." And she said, "Do you know, I think you might be right." 2 days later, they see a UFO
Right.
because it's like believing is seeing. It's like a faith, this phenomena. It's not like the other way. It's not like as it should be seeing is believing. It's believing is seeing. People are closed off. This is why cynics will say, "Oh, I don't believe in UFOs." Why? I've never seen one. Think about what you just said. You don't believe in them, you haven't seen one, you know, because they think that if you don't believe in them, you should still be able to see them. Not necessarily. So, yeah, you can get random incidents, but most of the time, it's stimulated through belief. Belief equals experience or encounters.
Well, and that's the thing is it always somewhat starts with the subconscious. And if you've been hearing about it in the news every day for 2 years, it's worked its way into your subconscious. A lot of people that start to experience the phenomenon, it works their way into their subconscious, but through their dream states first, and then they
Mm.
have that awake encounter.
The
It's very
physical aspect
similar,
of it. Yes. It
right?
just plays out. The phenomena, it seems to know about the homage, the worship, the interest, the belief. It draws upon those. And when we were conducting our experiments, we didn't, it took us 2 years, like I said, to initiate NHI communications. Could have done it in a fast way, but it wasn't safe. It was interesting because we had to go through a process of putting it out to people to be part of the experiment. We didn't pick who out, the phenomena did. We conducted experiments with those people and we measured the results. Pretty poor, not very good. Swap that person out, swap that person out. And eventually, after 2 years, we had excellent responses. We thought, right, we managed to get the 12, the circle of 12 right. Brilliant. Not one was a skeptic. Every
Right.
single one was a believer and an experiencer. The phenomena picked them by hand. Yeah. And this is why it works so well for them, when in the experiments, because we've got the right people. And now what we're realizing through Gary Nolan's work is that people are wired differently from experiencer. High bandwidth density. We we can measure it in the brain and the Claudette Buterman. And now we can
Well, I
see the
haven't had my
difference.
brain scanned yet, but it'll be getting scanned hopefully within the next year or
Yeah,
so during
yeah.
during
You
experiments
should
and
be able to
everything.
see it. And you
Yeah.
are literally wired differently than other people. You're wired directly into the phenomena. We are learning. We're chipping away at the block slowly, Alexei. We're just putting the parts together and realizing, God, we never knew how in depth this is. You know?
So let's. I kind of want to wrap it up though. So what would if you could teach and really inspire one thing to like stay in people's minds about the phenomenon, like what would be your goal in the disclosure? Why do you spend so much time trying to show people this information? I guess is another.
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I've been an experiencer and it was a hard hitter for me. My first experience was a bedroom visitor at 7 years of age, which opened up the floodgates. Now, as time went on and I started looking around, I realized, well, most people, they seem to stop when in their teens, chemistry, gills, and whatever. Your life changes and so forth, phenomena change, but it didn't for me. It never let up. My last experience was 2 weeks ago. It won't let up. And it's frustrating, but at the same time, it's been a positive thing because science needs replication, and I can give replication because I have experiences over and over again. So it's an opportunity for me. So I'll turn something a disadvantage into an advantage in regarding experiments and stuff. Um, but my main thing is about the caution, because everything is media driven with this phenomena. And people
Right.
will believe what they hear. People will go and buy a book and they'll bet their lives on that book. And so, how do you know the author's right?
That's
You know,
someone's story.
it's
I mean, I've
someone's
wrote a book. It's my
story.
story, though. It's what I think.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, it's very, very difficult. And sometimes the phenomenon is deliverable completely different to one person to another. It takes the measure of man or woman in some cases and delivers what is expected. It would be to address it with caution. Be careful about what you read and take it on board. Look, just open yourself as a researcher and let the floodgates of information fall in. But you don't have to sit there and make decisive interactions and work out, well, is that right or is this right? None of it has to be right. In fact, none of it might be right. We might all wake up tomorrow when it's all been a virtual reality dream. At the end of the day, we can only go as what we know. And I say to people, look, I'm dealing with people regularly which are having traumatic experiences. People say to me, Steve, why are you also so negative? I said, I'm not negative. I said, I focus a lot on those sort of things on my channel. But I know that there's a lot of all that good, love and light stuff out there. It's everywhere. And I do expect, people will have nice and euphoric experiences. Fine. But where's the voice for the ones that don't? It gets brushed under the carpet. Nobody talks about it. I said, and people don't think it's happening. People think of the. I talked to people who said alien abduction phenomenon. Oh yeah, that was all back in the 1980s and early 90s. What? No, it's still happening. It's not being reported. There's no social media about it. There's no support groups for these people hardly anymore. They don't know. People just think it's gone. And so for me, it's about just putting it all out on the table, positive and negative, and let people make their own minds up. I'm not out there to make people, believe in one thing or another. It's
Right.
down to them. But at least I will provide it all out on the table for at least saying there's nothing hidden here. This is what the phenomena can do. It's a double-edged sword, unfortunately. But it's like a
That's
toss
the,
of a coin.
I mean, that's why I think it's great. I think everybody should become aware of it. And the only reason I think, not the only reason, one of the main reasons is because we're caught up so much in the culture and the way that we're raised, that we've become disconnected from the earth itself and the universe.
So
And I think that our evolution and our technology is guiding us in the wrong way. But I feel like, how does that even relate to the phenomenon? I feel like it's so hard for me to describe. In my
we're
experience,
losing our spiritual journey. The problem is it's being replaced by a technological journey. And AI now,
you
and
get
and
it.
it's taken us away from how we used to be in our ancestors. We didn't have all that around them. We didn't need it, and this is
And we were
why we're
more in
so
tune with
different.
nature, right?
Yeah, and
We don't need
we're
it.
distancing ourselves every single day, Alexei. I don't think we are going to get back to it. I think it's too strong a drive for technology and AI and all these things now. That's where the future lies. So I'm
I
hoping
wrote
that
a
we don't
paper on that
lose
too, and it's
complete
how do
touch.
you even like switch that method of mate selection, because it's all about mate selection. Mate selection is based off culture, and so how can you even revert back to that prehistoric mate selection method? You
Yes.
can't,
No.
unless you wipe
No.
out the whole infrastructure.
Yeah.
But that's not the answer.
No, unfortunately
Yeah.
not. But you know what? I see phenomena. It evolves, it learns, it evolves, and it's evolving with us. And it always evolves, it always changes. Where's all the space brothers disappeared to? So as time goes on, phenomena will change with us. And now with AI, which can act as an open cockpit for NHI, because we know about ghost in the machine and all that sort of stuff. NHI can do the same thing. They can do all that with all these different types of equipment. We've demonstrated how they can do that.
Well,
So,
what I find really interesting about
problem.
AI is, when you think about the evolution of the human being, we've been around, let's just say 100,000 years, we've been evolving. Maybe in the last 300 years, we've really started using technology and really, really started using it. I know we've been in the Stone Age for a long time, but now we're using computer chips. We developed artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and
Think
you won't
about
believe.
the length of the universe as far as time, 14 billion years, the age of the Earth, 4.5 billion years.
Yeah,
We've developed AI within 300 years. Now, let's say humans become extinct, but AI lives on. I think that potentially the number one life form in the universe could be artificial intelligence created by beings
absolutely.
that no longer exist.
Yeah, they keep telling people about humanity's going to go off into space. We're not. It will
Artificial
be
intelligence
it will be
will.
AI. Why would we?
Right, right.
I know I wouldn't. I'd send me robot mate. you know, but
Exactly. So
you're
we're
right.
already sending robots to Mars. I mean, the Mars rovers, the satellites, everything.
And this is the technology we know, not the technology we don't know. I mean, it's always.
Correct.
I mean, this is. I got this here from the. I blagged myself. Get this from the defense contractor, nitinol. This space nitinol material, manufactured originally in 1965. They say if I put that in a freezer to -20, it turns to paper. I can screw it up, and when I bring it out and it warms, it opens up.
Right.
Solid piece of metal. It just turns to paper under the right conditions, nitinol. Incredible stuff. Very similar to the Roswell stuff, really. When you
That's
think,
what you were just reminding me. And I believe that led to the creation of memory metal. I'm not sure if that is
yeah,
considered a memory
that's
metal.
memory metal. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tough one to get hold of, but I managed to blag myself some from a defense contractor, to lay my hands on. But you know what? This is the stuff we do know. What about the stuff we don't know? There's a lot of stuff out there. Problem is, when we see stuff in the skies, we don't even know if it's ours now. It's, you know, I've seen some of these craft moving at 12,500 miles an hour on videos in 4K, and you think, surely we can't be ours, but then it banks round a mountain. Well, that's an
Right.
aeronautical maneuver. That
Right.
means that it's built to design of our physics, of our flight.
Well, I mean,
It's
you already had
ours.
David Adair building technologies that go over 8,000 miles an hour.
Yeah,
And then if
it's ours.
allegedly, if John Searle's work is true, he could go to the moon in about an hour.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
So when we look up in the sky, who knows, what's ours, what isn't now. We've come to a very delicate situation. What I can say, recognizing UAP, manipulation of duplication, they can merge, they can disappear, reappear. They can seemingly be apparitional, conscious connecting. That reminds me more of the phenomenon as opposed to just a structured craft which we can't identify anymore, to be honest with you.
right.
But light though is interesting. They have a new name for it, intelligent plasma forms. Um, and they're actually talking right at this moment in time, conversing at high levels to say, is it a sentient life form or is it something else which has been
Sentient
interfered
plasmas is basically what they're
sentient
saying,
plasma. So
right?
we're
Yeah.
talking of a life form here, not a craft. But then is that associated? Well, you can go back many years into ancient times and then further on into the Foo Fighters and all, you can go on and on with those sort of things. They're seen in paranormal cases. We've got photographs of them. I've got
Well, it's
video.
funny. You just when you said that, it was like imagine ancient people for the first time they saw a bird, they thought it was an airplane or something.
Yeah,
But I know we didn't have airplanes back when we first saw birds as humans.
it
You
is
can't even
crazy
relate it. I don't
how
know.
these things have been around forever, and you know what and we can't. We know we're not in any nearer trying to figure out because they are so covert, don't want to disclose themselves. They
Would
don't
you
want to
consider them
their
an
secrecy out.
extremophile? I mean, is that the easiest way to
I
scientifically
will
define it?
think so, yes. I mean, look,
Yeah.
we want disclosure. The phenomena doesn't even want disclosure. And that's when I was a bit, when I went to see Steven Spielberg's Disclosure movie, and it made it out like the ETs and all the great guys, and we're the ones forcing them not to be, it's a real handful because they want to disclose and we're trying to stop them. No, they could disclose any day. In the 21st century, everybody's got a cell phone. It comes and
Right.
it's down in any town centre in the world. Game over, But they don't want to do that. They want to be clandestine. They want to go about their operations. They want to do some good stuff. Want to do some bad stuff. Want to do some crazy stuff. But at the end of the day, we're trying to sit here and think we're trying to work it all out. And be honest with you, I don't know if we even can. You know.
No, it's like the Lost Tribes building
Yes.
airplanes out of,
Firing arrows at them.
right.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
forget which one
yeah.
it
You're
was. It
absolutely
was
right.
a tribe. I hate saying lost tribes because they're not lost. They're not
No,
lost. They
yeah,
know what they're
I think they
doing.
were
They're
throwing
found.
spears at the helicopter or something, wasn't they? And
They
you
built
know,
a runway to replicate an airplane. I forgot
yeah,
they called them
cargo cults
cargo.
did that.
Yeah,
They thought they were
exactly.
gods. They thought we were the gods.
Yeah,
And I think to myself, how long has that been going on for? Well, it's probably been going on for long before even us. And with phenomena, we see the cave paintings and the drawings from all over the world.
right.
It's not phenomena. It's not a new thing. It's not since the flying saucer era or Roswell. Long, long back. As far as I know, always been here because I've gone back as far as I possibly can. I mean, where do you go from before cuneiform? You can't really. It's not much before cuneiform, is there?
I believe the spotted horse is one of the original cave drawings, like from a hundred
Yeah,
thousand. But what does that give you? Just like little animals on
yeah.
a
I
cave
mean,
wall. Yeah,
you can't. So you have to sort of say proper documented information from ancient times. As soon as they started putting that details together, the phenomena was there. So it's been here since day one. So are they terrestrial, just on a different plane? I mean, I do know that these things can manifest under seance. The first beings, non-human intelligence, was seen around seance tables, not in association with a UFO. But they don't like to tell you about that because somebody came along very cleverly and put them all into different boxes, causing compartmentalization. And that's why
correct. Yep.
nobody put them all together and realized that there's connections with them. You know?
Yeah. For me, it started, extremely vivid dreams, and There was never a difference between UFOs and the paranormal
No.
poltergeist type activity. It was always one and the same, highly connected always. Let's
Yeah.
just say that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, there was one incident where we had a poltergeist case, and it was nicknamed Matches. I don't know why. Somebody nicknamed it who was living there. And when we had NHI communications, that came up, Matches.
Right.
You know, and I think, how did he know this? This is all connected. And yeah, they knew exactly what was what. So you think to yourself, okay, whatever we are dealing with at the end of the day is intelligence. But they do tell us some great pork pies, I have to say. You know, a lot of deception sometimes. But then there's times when they say we won't tell you, or can't tell you, or completely ignore you. So even now, they're still they will share bits, but very reluctant to give you a full picture. It's to keep you hooked in.
I
And
think
keep me
so. Yeah.
turning. That's what it is. It's about the hook in the skin and keep me turning, keep coming back, come for more and more. I've got friends which are in Brazil, and I'm in contact with them weekly. Stuff's going on over there is absolutely terrible. I mean, you know, people are bloodletting to the phenomena. I mean, stabbing their own hands and
Right.
it's reacting. There's some very, very strange stuff going on over in Brazil, you know, but it's fundamentally it's a place where, you know, the occult side of for this type of phenomena is just ran everywhere, everywhere. And
Well, some religions more than others, right? Like
yes,
encourage it in a way. Like I don't know if voodoo is a good example, but I feel like they do like
it's a bit
black
of a
magic
mix. You've got
rituals.
such a mix in Brazil of different types of religions, and they get these cocktails, but then they've got they've got a lot of phenomena. Some of it has actually not been great. Some of it's been pretty bad. People have been chased and harmed by some of these light phenomena and stuff. It's incredible some of the things that are going on, but people don't get to hear about it in the Western world much. You know,
Well,
there's
that's
a massive problem.
the face peelers or something like that, right?
Well,
Isn't
yeah,
that
it's face peelers, but I think I think it's down to some, you know, it's technology it's involved, and I think it's down to us. You know, I mean, you know, I mean, when they've heard them talking and they've got accents.
right? And they're speaking English.
Yeah, I don't speak
Right.
English, you know. So yeah, but you know what? There is a lot of gold out there.
Right.
And there's certain areas I was told where these small villages are, and they scare the living hell out of them, and they move. And then they could commandeer that location for mining and all sorts of different things.
And
So it could be
that's been a
something.
practice for a while, for some time now, you're saying?
Yeah, it has. And
Yeah.
I think it could be something to do with that, but you know, I don't think it's a phenomenon. I think
Right.
it's
I get that. Yeah.
yeah, I do believe though that somebody's got some great toys though, for
That's like
sure.
more of a Scooby-Doo type
Yeah,
situation.
absolutely. But then
Right.
there is other things though in Brazil which is absolutely crazy, you know, some of the which I would say yes, most definitely is phenomenon. Especially when it's no longer in the sky, it's entering people's homes. You know, that's becomes a real problem, you know. So it is different for different worlds. But the thing is, I'm only in contact with them because we wouldn't hear about these events. It doesn't get out from Brazil into the Western world, stuff we don't ever hear of. So I do that on purpose, just so I can keep an eye on of what's going on in Brazil at, you know, at the moment. And it's
Right.
surprisingly different than other countries for sure.
But we are designing a meditation chamber, is one way of putting it.
Okay.
Uh, and we are instilling theta, but
Hmm.
not necessarily theta. I want to say it's a transitional state between theta and alpha, is more what we're focusing on. Is trying to
Right.
get to that where you're in transition and then freeze it. That's where we want to be.
Yeah.
So
So basically what you want to do is you're trying to achieve the right brain frequencies,
correct.
induce it. How are
Yes.
you in? Well, you might not be able to tell me, but I was curious about the out
Well,
and
I don't
out.
want to give away. It's not that I'm trying
No,
to hide it from
you
anyone.
don't need to
It's
tell me.
just
No, but
the
I
official
understand.
submission date.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand what you're trying to do is you're trying to create an incident which can be
Correct.
sustained in that location. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing that you brought up that we hadn't just really discussed is bringing in that terahertz vibration. Um, that's
Terahertz is
interesting.
interesting. Yeah, it's very,
Yeah,
very difficult to create it. It's specialized balls for generating terahertz frequency,
right.
and they're expensive, but it can be done. It's not impossible, because
I
we've
mean, is
done it.
that safe though? Like, I'm thinking, is that safe to hit someone with a terahertz laser?
Well, no, it's not laser. It is actual bulb. It
Like a
likes
light?
terahertz. Yes,
I need
but
to look at what.
they're very expensive and they're quite hard to get hold of. But they do generate terahertz frequency. Um, I mean, experiments are always done under the conditions of normal terahertz frequency, but it can be reproduced.
Okay,
Terahertz.
I was in the. Okay, I think no, so that's not so bad. It's
Yeah.
infrared. I was thinking it was more like X-ray and beyond, like gamma
Oh no,
rays.
no, no, no,
Yeah,
no, no. It's just a high frequency,
it's more
but it can be
infrared. That makes a
generated.
lot more sense actually,
Yeah, you
but
can
yeah.
generate it. You can sustain that 100 terahertz frequency. Absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
But some people though, they were saying that some people from different times had different rhythmic frequencies. Because if you look at all these different resonant chambers, not all the same frequencies. I mean,
Right.
if you go to Ireland, and you're on a different frequency altogether there, compared to other places. Um, the frequencies of the Bosnian pyramid, I mean, they are just like completely when you listen to the stuff that comes out on frequencies, it sounds like language. It's absolutely crazy. It really is. But
And then you
like,
also mentioned the geomagnetic locations and things of that nature. And so what I've
well,
come
yeah,
to see,
because is it mobile? Is this
it
going to be a
is.
mobile? Right. So that gives you the opportunity to move it into locations where there's high positive magnetics then.
But at the same time, you can potentially reproduce the environmental factors using something called tactile transducers, which are basically speakers underneath the entire structure that'll give like almost like an earth vibration, but to
Ah,
the system
right.
itself.
Right. It sounds
So that's
fascinating.
something I've been looking at. I'm still brainstorming right now, but I think through the use of a tactile transducers, a couple speakers, and potentially some type of light therapy. I didn't think about the light. That wasn't really part of it, but I think it might end up being part of it, using the
Mm,
terahertz light.
yeah. Well, I mean, most people, I mean, they say it's one of the best meditative states is doing it at the rising sun or the setting sun,
Correct. Yeah.
and it's basically because it's the terahertz frequency. It's
Well, that's
helping.
the thing is that you don't think of those chambers as having too much light associated with them, but until the 4 minutes of one day when the light is actually shining into the chamber, right?
Yes, so that's when the chamber becomes used for something else.
Right.
And that's when you use the double knock system of frequencies overlapping each other to really it starts to really fire up. It's really I think a lot of people have missed it because they just thought, well, what's a resonant chamber to do except for the rest of the year, except for 2 days. It's just sat there not being used. Well, no, it
Right.
was used all the time, you know. But there's one method of use, and there's a second layer of use as well at that given times of the light frequency and the vocal frequency at the same time. It is pretty
Right. So it's
fascinating
something to
stuff.
consider.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. Well, do let me know how you go on with that. Yeah, it'd be fascinating to do some advertising for it and put it into
Definitely.
it's in
And
the
the
magazine.
greatest challenge though is making is the mobile aspect, right? Because if you want something so rigid, so stiff for good acoustic reflections,
Yeah,
but
I
you also
know.
want it to be big enough to get those long waveforms, you're ending up with like a 30 by 30 foot cube, but that you need to be able to transport. So
That's the
I've got some
problem.
challenges ahead of
Yeah,
me.
certainly
Um,
do. Yeah, I
yeah,
know it's interesting though. I'm glad you're thinking things like that because it's outside the box and that's what we need to do, Alexei, to be honest with you.
yeah. Well,
You
I think
know?
that's where in my opinion, that's where the data is taking us. And
Yeah,
that's where I'm headed. So
totally agree.
yeah,
Well, keep in touch. Let me know how things go. If you want me to come back on the show, just get in touch. Leave me, get me